listening to the Fours Up Podcast with your host, Marsh.
What up, Canes fans? It is the Fours Up Podcast. We are back. It is Thursday, February 4th. We have been doing this podcast for over a year now.
That's crazy, dude.
That is insane. It like a year ago is when my fire alarm went off during our second or third episode.
Yeah, yeah, dude. That was good times.
Yeah, I mean, and what started just as you and me sharing one microphone in my basement on that first episode.
We had to snuggle so you could hear both of us.
We were cuddling. We were spooning, talking about the Canes.
It's true. Lashley. As soon as Rhett Lashley came up, we had to separate ourselves for, like 6 inches.
But dude, lot of stuff happening right now for the Canes. National Signing Day just passed. 2021 class is over. Just like I can't believe we're on to the 2022 class. T-Will, T-Rob, all these hires. We got a lot to talk about this episode, but I've been very, very, very much looking forward to this guest. I think this is probably the biggest guest that we've had so far since starting this podcast. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. Yeah, and this is I feel like it's a pretty big deal, that we're getting this guest on. It'll be fun to talk some recruiting. So,
absolutely.
Anyways, I'm gonna patch him in. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Cool. Hey, Mike.
Hey,
Mike. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. So we now welcome on big guest, Mike Farrell. He's the national recruiting director for Rivals.com. The guy is known around the country when it comes to recruiting. Mike, so National Signing Day is past. The 2021 class is over. Are you taking some time off to, get away from recruiting for a little bit, or are you getting right into the next cycle?
No, I'm getting right in. I mean, if Nick Saban's zooming with, 15, 20, 22 kids today, then I'm going to be working on the 2022 class as well, because that's the only way to get great is to just keep plugging along.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to start off first because you obviously this is Miami Hurricanes podcast, and you recently talked to Manny Diaz either yesterday or the day before. You talked to a lot of college football coaches. What was your thoughts when talking to Coach Diaz? What were your takeaways, and more importantly, what are your thoughts on Miami moving forward as a program this next season?
It was yesterday morning, and the first thing that struck me was that, his office was right in front of an indoor practice facility, which they haven't had forever. And I haven't been down there in a few years, and obviously with the pandemic, a lot of kids haven't been there either. But facilities-wise, he admitted they were behind for a long time. And that didn't make a difference when recruiting wasn't national, but it does now when kids are visiting every school and they got all the bells and whistles, and then they come to Miami and they get a little bit disappointed. So that indoor practice facility and all the millions they've spent on their facilities, he's very excited about. He obviously sold the weather too. I mean, it was 8 a.m. in the morning when I talked to him, and it was 70 degrees and sunny. And, there's a lot of things to sell at Miami. And he said it can be done here. It's been done before. There's obviously been a dynasty at Miami before. So there's proof that it can be done. He's just got to keep a lot of the talent home, and then, evaluate and spot recruit properly when he does leave the state. And, he's very happy about this class.
Okay. Well, so that brings up a few questions that I have for you, Mike. The first one that I want to ask is, how would you assess the Manny Diaz head coaching tenure so far at the University of Miami? I know we've had some ups and downs, but what's your overall takeaway?
Yeah, I'd give him probably a B-. I'm teetering on C+, B- because, he inherited a not so great situation. So you got to give him a little bit of leeway there. Recruiting has improved. but they've lost some games that they should not lose.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. And that's what Miami fans get upset with. So, a season ago, it ended horribly. And that was his first year. And it was like, okay, what do we have here? Is this guy over his head? This past year, I think we saw a little bit more of what we can expect. An 8-3 season is a good building block. They were 4-1 at home, in conference 7-2. No real horrible losses. And De'Aaron King helps that, and he's going to work the portal, to continue to help his roster. But he wants to build, based on high school kids, as everybody does. I mean, every coach I talked to yesterday wants to build up based on, developing players rather than just taking them from the portal. But when you can get a kid like, De'Aaron King, it changes the rhythm and feeling of your team. And yes, they got crushed by Clemson, and got crushed by North Carolina. They have work to do, but not as much as the year before. I mean, that was an ugly year.
Yeah. So this is the next topic I want to ask you about. It's a little dense, so we can just kind of skirt around it, I guess. But it's something that Marsh and I talk a lot about on this show. From your outside perspective, do you consider the Miami Hurricanes program a blue chip program?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I would say no. And I grew up, and cut my teeth in this business with, Miami and the fatigues and the domination and Jimmy Johnson and, the Michael Irvins and Warren Sapps of the world. And they were just, to me, being in New England as a Big East fan, they were just astonishingly incredible. And I got to see them every other year because I went to all the Boston College games, and I saw the game they almost lost where Ed Reed had the 90-yard interception return and all that stuff. And they were just bigger than life, and they're not that way now. And so I look at them as a program that has a storied history, but that history is so long ago.
Yeah.
We're talking 2001, 2002, that they can't be considered one of the blue chips in college football right now. Traditionally, yes, but not based on current results.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. One thing I want to ask you, and one thing that I ask a lot of the guests, whether it's former Hurricanes, things like that. Do you think Manny Diaz is the guy to help somewhat bring back that that reputation and that relevancy in college football for Miami?
I don't know. There's like 5 or 6 programs I want to be really good again because I think it's good for college football. And the rise of Clemson was unseen. So that's good for college football as well. But when you have a strong Miami program, when you have a strong USC or Texas program, college football is much better. It takes a special coach to do that, to overcome everything, especially because everybody's in South Florida now. They're not afraid. Urban Meyer is the one I think that really started the downfall of the dynasty. And Larry Coker kind of let it happen when he said, I don't care that they're Miami. I'm going in South Florida. And Doc Holliday was his recruiting coach, and they went down there and they took a bunch of kids out. And all of a sudden, kids realized, hey, we can go elsewhere, win a national championship. And that kind of ruined it for Miami at the time. I can't say that he is. He's got one thing to do. He's got to win his division. I talked to Mac Brown yesterday as well. That the path is clear for the ACC. You win your division and you beat Clemson. He's close to winning the division. Okay, the UNC game was ugly, but he's not close to beating Clemson. And so that's where I say I don't know. This class could really push it along. There's some real talented kids in here, but Miami always seems to stub their toe in some way lately, and until that stops, remember there was Clemsoning?
Yeah.
Miami does the same thing now. It's like They got to get over the hump and get that winning feeling and confidence in the culture of the program.
I feel like we have to graduate to Clemsoning because I don't even feel like we're at that level yet. Like
Yeah.
Clemsoning was was being a perennial top 10 team and then losing in your biggest game. It's like as soon as we sniff the top 10, we stub our toe. I think Clemsoning is the next level we have to get to, unfortunately. But I couldn't agree more with what you're saying.
Steps.
Well, the skill positions need to change. I mean, come on, this is really embarrassing. When I look at Miami and I scout teams because I also fancy myself sort of a draft guy, and because I've known these kids since they were 14, so I know what type of person Trevor Lawrence is. So I scout these teams and I look and I'm like, it is just amazing. Not only the drop passes, but the lack of development. I mean, Mark Pope, it's in his head. It's not his ability. It's in his head, and it hasn't been developed. And Lorenzo Lingard is now off at Florida, and I don't think he's going to be any better there. I don't think it was instilled in him to be great, and that's what really bothers me about this is that there's no weapons. Their D line is great. Their defense is solid. The O line needs work. That's not pretty, but the skill guys. I mean, you got nobody who could take an 8-yard pass and turn it into a touchdown consistently. Yeah. And that is not Miami. And so they need to get back to that.
Yeah, I think we watched Mike Harley do that once last year, and it felt like that was the first time I had seen a Miami player do that in 15 years.
And every single week we are waiting for the Mark Pope breakout game. We've been waiting for 3 years.
It's not. I mean, after 3 years, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Yeah. And that is all head, mental, work ethic, developmental stuff. Like he got there, he wasn't de-recruited clearly, and no one pushed him to be stronger and better. And that also comes with not having great defensive backs. You need to have. Saban was talking about Jerry Jeudy going up against Patrick Surtain in practice every day. Iron sharpens iron. There's nobody that can really do that on the defensive side of things either. So when you get a James Williams, who is a special defensive back, and he's a safety, so it's different than a corner. But when you get a guy like that, like a Derwin James at Florida State, and they challenge you, but also bring along the other guys, the Jalen Ramseys of the world. Although Ramsey was before Derwin, so it's Ramsey, Derwin, and then I forget who the next one was, but you need that. You need those guys that will bring along other guys and teach them how to be great. Now, is James Williams going to be the Mark Pope of defense? I don't know, but he better not be because they need leaders and they need guys to step up and be great, and that's going to make other players great.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I have two questions. I have a question about James Williams, but first I want to so Miami just hired Travaris Robinson as the new defensive backs coach and Travis Williams as the inside linebackers coach. I think our development, especially in defensive backs and linebackers, has been very, very underwhelming, honestly, for 10 plus years. What are your thoughts on these recent hires? And I also wanted to get your thoughts on Rhett Lashley and a guy like Rob Likens and Garen Justice.
I think these are good hires because these are guys that have coached at the high school level. They've recently played at the NFL level, and by recent, Travis Williams last played in 2007, but that's recent enough for kids to say, wow, this guy was in the league. He was an all SEC guy. He's got the credentials and he worked his way up at Auburn, and I think he's going to be a good recruiter for them. These are good hires from a recruiting aspect. Can they develop guys? I don't know. The last linebacker coach that I really, really liked at Miami was Vernon Hargrave, and that was 100 years ago. And he had the swagger, he had the and again, Coker kind of that whole strategy of recruiting out of state and all this, it was a nightmare, and everybody split off, and I don't know where Vernon is now. Cincinnati? No, not Cincinnati. I don't know. East Carolina, somewhere. And you see a great coach like that go. off onto different jobs and different jobs and different jobs.